Again, my name's Ariane Gallagher. I work at the policy shop at OPM, and I worked with the group at OPM and OMB as part of the President's Management Agenda, the People and Culture Group, to help develop this tool. And I'm one of the leads at OPM, sort of leading it as we're going forward. Next slide. So basically, I want to make this really short and simple. I want to cover some basic stuff, sort of what is Unlock Talent, why did we build it, what does it do, and what can you do with it? And this is a very new tool. We just unrolled the first iteration out in July, so it's very much in the early stages of development. Next slide. Basically, also I want to make sure that I get the user perspective when we're talking about Unlock Talent, because I can talk about this for hours, and basically I want folks to hear from the user perspective how it's been going so far, what users have been using it for, and what we can do to make it better. So I brought in two of my best beta testers that we had, Rhonda Jones from CISOSA, the Court Services and Offender Supervision Agency, and Michael Lawyer from HUD. They provided us some really great feedback during user testing, and Rhonda has been part of our group helping us develop the tool over time. And so I wanted to have them talk about some of their experiences with the tool and just talk about how their agency has been using it and what we can do to make it better. We really much want to have a user-centric approach to building this tool as it goes forward. Next slide. So basically, what is Unlocking Federal Talent? So Unlocking Federal Talent is a web-based data tool, and it's for federal agencies to help drive data-driven decision-making, I can say that better, to foster a culture of engagement. And there's mainly on there's two types of data that we use to fuel the dashboard. And one is the FEVS, that's the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey data. And then EHRI is the Enterprise Human Resources Integration Database. That is a database that we have at OPM that we use. For all of you federal agencies out there, when you have your employees fill out the SF50s with a lot of their information and for different personnel actions, that's the data that's being put into the EHRI database, and we're using that to pull information from agencies about their employee population, et cetera, that we're using to help drive some of the things on the dashboard. And like I talked about, we're developing through a multi-phased approach. We unleashed the first iteration back in July. We hope to do at least a couple more iterations before July of next year, where we work on sort of a sustainability plan. And we want to have it go through multiple iterations because we want to have users looking at it and using it through multiple times, telling us how we can make it better. And it's user testing and input is critical. It takes a village to build this site. We want to make sure that we don't build it and then it dies because nobody's using it. So we want to make sure that over time we are making sure that all the upgrades and everything that we do to the site has a user-centric approach and is valuable to the users. Next slide. So basically, why did we do this? Why did we build this tool? It's part of the President's Management Agenda, the People and Culture Cross-Agency Priority Goal. You can find out more about the People and Culture CAP goal and the different sub-goals underneath it by going to performance.gov. And if you look under the cross-agency priority goals, you can see all of our goals and milestones that are attached with the People and Culture goal. And the reason why the President's Management Agenda has the People and Culture goal is for a lot of all the other goals that they want to accomplish as part of the agenda, none of those can be accomplished without people. And so people and culture is kind of like the main foundation that we're using to help drive all of the other milestones that are part of the President's Management Agenda. And the People and Culture goal is co-led by Director Archuleta over at the Office of Personnel Management and by the Presidential Personnel Office over at the White House. So we're working with them really closely to develop this tool. And the goal that we're working under for this tool is to create a culture of excellence and engagement to enable higher performance. That's sort of one of the main tenets of the People and Culture goal. And out of a bunch of things we're doing, we realized that we wanted to make sure that we're building tools and resources so that agencies can accomplish this goal. And before, agencies have to go through different sources in order to get the data that they need to evaluate their workforce. The survey team has a great FEVS online survey tool that you can really do some deep dive analytics on. So folks go to that to get some really good information on the survey data. Folks a lot of times contact OPM to get their information from EHRI or from their other human capital databases to get information about their workforce. So it takes a lot of time to put a lot of those data sources together and then try to understand and figure out how can I use this to help improve employee engagement. And so one of the things that Unlock Talent is trying to start to do is to help combine some of those data sources together in one place, make it easy to use, have it web-based, so you can just go online, and using adaptive design, meaning that you can view it on your iPad, your computer, your phone. It has a design that enables any of those interfaces. And then it's customizable and scalable over time. One of the things that we want to do sort of for the final iteration is to have agencies have the capability to upload their own data into the tool so that they can use their own data plus the data that we provide to really get a comprehensive picture of their workforce and figure out the strategies to improve employee engagement. And then we're using current data visualization techniques to help bring the data to life. Seeing a bunch of numbers and seeing the data is great, but what can you do with data? A lot of times I used to work with the former Chief Technology Officer, Todd Park, and what he used to say is, I can't eat data. I can't provide clothing for my children with data. So what can you do with data to make things valuable? Next slide. So now I just want to basically go into a really quick demo, just sort of showing you guys what can it do, what are some of the visualizations that are on there, and then I can log on quickly. We'll share it on the desktop here so that folks at home can follow along. But as I'm doing that, do folks have any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do the adopting agencies pay for the service, or is it just going to be a tool that OPM makes available?
That is a really great question. So right now our strategy is the latter, that it is a free tool that we want to provide to agencies. As it continues to grow, it might be something that would turn into a small fee, but as far as we're at this stage, we want to keep it a free tool for as long as possible.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So aside from the data visualization that you're going to show us, how is this different from what data is currently available from FEVS and FedScope?
That is a really great question. So one of the things that we are trying to do with the dashboard is that it's combining a lot of data sources. So from the FEVS online survey tool, you only get the survey data. And from FedScope, you only get a certain amount of human capital data. So what we're trying to do is combine these data sources together and provide it in a way that you can look at both of them to get a better picture, to tell a story about your agency through your data, through your workforce data, and through the survey data. So I am going to use my agency as the example because I know I'm allowed to do that.
Is everybody on the phone? Can you hear the questions and answers?
This is Hayden. I can barely get coming in and out because of the distance. Just speaking from away from the phone, I can hear some of it, some of it I can't hear.
I just noticed that there was one.
This is Larry. I can hear it fine.
Oh, it's on the floor. There should have been one up front for her.
Let me ask you another question as well. You indicated that it's comparative data from the other sites. Do you have the ability, perhaps you're going to go there, to do trends analysis on how one agency perhaps aligns with another agency? So if you wanted to compare and contrast how your agency at 10,000 is doing against other agencies that are 10,000?
That is a really good question, and it's one of the things that we're looking into. One of the issues that we're having with comparison analysis like that is that in terms of like
Could you
governance.
please repeat the question?
Oh, yep. So sorry.
If participants could put their phones on mute, there's somebody that's shuffling something around. Cannot hear a thing, and so for the last 2 minutes.
Wait, I'm sorry. We're moving the speakers around so you can hear better.
Can folks hear me now?
Yes, could we please repeat the questions when they are asked, just to be sure?
Yep. So the question that was asked was around, are we going to add the capability to be able for agencies that are similar to one another to be able to compare each other, like use their data and be able to compare how they're doing with agencies that are similar to them, which is a really great question, and it's something that we hope to be able to do, but one of the issues that we're having is in terms of governance of the data. For example, some agencies are not as enthused about sharing their data with one another as much as we would like. And it's so a lot of times in terms of the ownership of their data, like for example, OPM's data is OPM's data. So in terms of, we'd have to sort of work out arrangements so that agencies would agree to share their data with one another. And that's something that a bunch of agencies are excited and are willing to do. And I think we just need to sort of work into that model to be able to compare one agency with another. And it's sort of, with us as we're administering it, that's something that we would have to request permission for from all the agencies before we'd be able to do that. And so that's one of the things that we're working as we keep building and keeping the sustainability of the site, is to able to build a culture of folks that want to share their data and keep it open. And that's something that we hope that the dashboard will enable to do, and will help bring that to the surface. Yes?
Is there an advantage or disadvantage for them to share data like that?
I think, yep.
And that's the resistance, you know?
Yep, so the question was, is there an advantage or disadvantage to agencies to sharing their data? And I think it depends on who you ask. And I think there are a ton of advantages to sharing the data, especially with agencies that are very similar to one another. One of the things that a lot of agencies sort of go back is like, my agency is different because. And so it's sort of, they talk about sort of, my agency is different because we're all over the country, we have 10,000 folks, there's a wide variety of federal agencies that are large and small, so making sure that what they're comparing themselves to is sort of an apples to apples comparison is really important to people. And so I think there are definitely a lot of advantages for agencies to share their data, because it can help start the conversation as saying, this agency is pretty similar in size and mission, and their scores seem to be widely different. Why is that? Sort of what techniques are they doing? It can help start a conversation. So I think there's a wide variety of advantages to that, and we're hoping that as we continue on building the site, that's something that we can help foster.
This is an interesting question, because there already is a best places to work index, which kind of ranks agencies in scope and size, and it also breaks it down and shows what number ranking you are and how you compare to other similar. So it's similar, because I don't think they get permission. Those scores are kind of like common knowledge, but when you're talking about different data points, right, that you can get to using this tool, it might be different. But it would be interesting using the information that's already out there and that people are already widely comparing anyway.
Definitely, that's a really great point. So let's dive into the tool. So right now we are on sort of the landing page of Unlock Talent. This is the agency overview page. The point of this page is to give folks just a really quick snapshot of their organization in terms of what their engagement score was for the current year, their engagement ranking, and the number of employees. And sort of it gives them a snapshot of their workforce, taking a look at some demographic data that we have with some of the pie charts in terms of their workforce, their race, ethnicity, gender, age. And then one of the features that I really like is sort of one of my favorite features of the dashboard is our map feature. And so what you're able to do right now with the first iteration is just be able to scroll over the map and sort of see the number of employees that you have in a given state. And one of the things that we're hoping to do with the next iteration of this, that we hope to come out in the end of December, beginning of January, is to have this map feature a lot more detailed and have a lot more information, have the ability to be able to filter down and sort of see, okay, in Pennsylvania I have 1,300 employees, what's the breakdown in terms of age, what's the breakdown in terms of pay status, and sort of get a lot more detailed information by region. And then we also want to hopefully add the capability for international locations, because there are plenty of agencies that have international presence of their workforce, so we want to make sure that we include that as well. Also on the main page is sort of like a 3-year trend of your engagement scores for the past 3 years, and then taking a look at the bottom, it also shows what your response rates are. So basically this is sort of a very sort of quick and dirty page about some really quick statistics about your agency, give you a little bit of a snapshot of your organization. And so now we want to go into the sort of deeper dives of the data, and you'll find that with the employee engagement page and with the global satisfaction page. Now, they're both built exactly the same. They're showing different data points. And so the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey data that we have on the dashboard involves two indices of the survey. One is the Employee Engagement Index, which is a combination of 15 questions from the survey that helps you develop an employee engagement score. The second one is Global Satisfaction, and same type of set of questions. The different questions are: how satisfied are you with your pay? Would you recommend your organization as a good place to work? Things like that. And so there are two different indices of the survey that we include as part of the dashboard. So if we take a look at employee engagement, so basically it's divided by agency-wide engagement scores and then by component. So what you can do globally is, in terms of an agency, is you can see your engagement scores overall as an agency. So what you can see here are some of the overall engagement scores for OPM, and the Employee Engagement Index is broken into 3 categories: leaders lead, supervisors, and intrinsic work experience. So within each of those is 5 different questions as part of the survey that sort of add up into the Employee Engagement Index. So here you can take a look at some overall scores, but then what also you can do is you can view the results by demographics. So here you can take a look at, for example, what we see is a breakdown by age for the overall agency. Here's what the engagement scores were with an age breakdown: 25 and under, 26 to 29, and we have several other filters that you can take a look at. One is disability status. You can take a look at federal tenure, how long people have been working within the federal government, and supervisory status. There's a bunch of different demographic filters that you can use to dive deeper into your data and take a look at your engagement scores.
I have a question for you.
Uh-huh.
When you have I'm confused with what you mean by engagement score, you have for age, so 25 less, 30 to 40. How is that quantified into a number by saying, oh, they're 75% engaged? I don't understand the correlation.
So the way that you look at the survey, okay, so the question was, sorry about that. So the question was, what's the engagement score mean? How does that roll up in terms of what we're looking at on the site in terms of the engagement score? And so the engagement score is a formula that's developed by the survey team, and it's taking a look at the answers to the 15 different questions that make up the index. So they take a look at the answers for the 15 questions, and I use that to calculate an employee engagement score. So it's a formula that the survey team at OPM comes up with to determine sort of what is the employee engagement index score for your agency. So they take a look at, for example, so for 25 and under, so for all the individuals 25 and under at the agency who took the survey, they look at their answers and then they populate what their score is. Does that make sense?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just slicing the data in a different way. So you're looking at the demographic, age group, and the scores associated with that demographic age group.
Mm-hmm. And then you can take a look at it by component. So this breaks it down into the different sort of offices or bureaus of the agency, and it sort of breaks down their scores that way. And we always make sure that you can see the number of responses for each of the areas, and then the response rate, and then a sense of the score. For the color coding, green means that you're above the government-wide average, and red means that you're below the current government-wide average. So that kind of just gives you a sense of where you are in overall sense of where the government-wide average is currently. You had a question?
So I was about to ask you that question, and I think you're maybe touching on it right now. So does this define the outlier? Are you referencing to, not everybody's alike inside when they're being rated. So if everything is the same, now with folks that are different, whether they're exceeding or not, they're the outliers, right? Is the tool going to capture that and show differences, or is it trying to make everybody look and sound the same? Is there a caveat to it?
So the question is, please let me know if I'm paraphrasing it correctly, is there a way in the tool to sort of identify outliers within and seeing how the comparisons work? And so the answer to that question is that each agency has the ability to compare themselves to the government-wide average, not necessarily to one another in terms of agencies. So what these color codes are designed to do is they're designed to provide them a comparison with the government-wide average. So for example, the government-wide average for a particular, let's say employee engagement, the government-wide average is 60%. So what this does is if you're below 60% for your employee engagement score, it shows, it indicates that it's red, meaning for that particular area, you're below the government-wide average. And so that can mean a bunch of different things. So it's just sort of providing you a first sense of comparison. And one of the things that we hope to do with the tool is provide other areas of comparison. Whether that can be you can compare yourself with agencies that are similar to you, or that you can compare yourselves with other survey data that's out there. That's something that we're developing and trying to figure out what are some really important comparison points. And so going through the tool, this kind of gives you a sense of the overall agency. And so another thing that we do, and here's just an example of some trend data that you can take a look at. For example, you can filter it sort of saying like, where were all the areas that we had increases in the past year? And then you can sort of bubble over and see like what the score changes were. So you can really figure out like what were some, overall agency-wide, what were some places where we really had some significant improvement, and then what were some areas that we didn't, and we had some significant downfall. So I think that's particularly interesting. And then you can also go one level deeper, meaning by you can go through any of these bureaus within your agency. So let's take employee services as an example. So then you can view the information by just that component of your agency, by employee services. So you can take a look at their overall scores, you can see the breakdown of their offices and then what their scores were, and then you can use the same sort of filter by demographic. So you can take a look at sort of age, ethnicity. So it's able to go, you go one level deeper, which sometimes is really valuable. And one of the pieces of feedback that we've gotten from folks is that they'd like to go even deeper, even down into the different offices. So that's sort of one thing that folks have asked about. So global satisfaction is built the same exact way. It's showing different data points. Community of practice is one of the things that we're working with, and Mika is actually one of our individuals helping the creation of this site, working with the Chico Labor Management Council group that Debbie talked about. And this is just sort of provide an area that can provide additional resources and information for folks who want to learn more and who want to hear stories and best practices from other agencies. And basically it's just starting. We're going to build out this page with a lot more great information. Right now we have some videos we did, and you can find these on OPM's YouTube channel. This presentation we did with the FDIC. It was a conversation of how they were able to take their engagement scores from their ranking from number 23 to number 1 in a matter of a few years. So they talked about how they did that and some of the things that they did to implement and drive that change. So if you do have a chance, go to the OPM YouTube channel and check those out. They're really interesting. And so we hope to build this out with a lot more information as time goes on and really make this a valuable resource for people to go to when they're using the site. And then the last page that we'll talk about is the HR core metrics, and this is in sort of its very early stages of infancy. Right now there isn't any data on it, and what we hope to do in the next iteration is start building this out. But what we want to do with this is really show some data points in the context of the employee life cycle. Take a look at, in terms of recruitment and hiring, development, performance, what are some metrics in each of those categories that agencies would want to know? So for example, for recruiting and hiring, it could be how long does it take me to hire employees? It would look at your time to hire metrics. For development, it could be training data. Well, what sort of training? Like how are people getting their training? What courses are people taking? And then the same thing with succession and retirement. How quickly, what's our retirement rate each year, and how much of my workforce is eligible to retire at this point? That is going to become a really important data point in the next couple of years as everyone anticipates there to be a large retirement rate within a lot of agencies. And so we are just sort of starting this up where we're hoping to build this out, and we hope to use a lot of the data points that we collect from using the EHRI database, and we also plan to work with the HR Stat group at OPM to use a lot of those metrics that agencies submit as part of their HR Stat efforts and use, so that we're not sending them to disparate sources, and they can help use this as another tool to use those during their HR Stat reviews.
You had a question?
This is outstanding. This is what is, in my opinion, going to be of great value. Is how do you envision taking the core data around these 4 pillars and using that as a message to amplify to departments and agencies, areas or lawmakers for that instance, areas of focus to continue driving us forward. So if you take the succession pillar alone, agencies are not yet talking about succession as much as they should with what the trends are showing us for retirement. So perhaps this is a great tool to help amplify the message to decision makers. How do you envision that this could be a force multiplier to get that message out to departments and agencies?
So if I'm paraphrasing your question correctly, it's sort of how are we envisioning building out this HR core metrics tool to help sort of send a message to agencies about what data points they should be looking at, how to sort of really craft the message and sort of do a little bit more of policy making in terms of this area. How can we use that? That's a really great question, and the answer to that is right now we're just starting. We're trying to figure out, it's like one of the things that we're trying to develop with this tool is kind of using lean startup techniques and sort of building a minimum viable product and going from there. And so what we're trying to do is just figure out sort of what can we put on this site that will keep it sustaining, that will make it valuable, that people will actually use it. And so what we're doing is sort of at multiple iterations at a time, sort of figuring out what metrics are really valuable that we can start populating this space in, and sort of where can we go from there? What data is available for us to pull? Can we pull from other data sources? And so we're trying to sort of figure out sort of like Lego point by Lego point, kind of how can we build this to make it a really powerful tool. And I think one of the things that we're hoping that this drives is really going back to that data-driven decision making, and like not making decisions based on assumptions, but making decisions based on the data you have and making that data easily available to you so you can make those decisions on a lot of the quick timelines that a lot of folks seem to be on. And so we're scratching the surface, and we want to work with agencies all over to figure out how can we do this, and we want to do this the right way, making it a user-centric approach. So that is a really quick demo of the site and everything that we sort of currently have on there right now. As I talked about before, for this next upcoming stage of iteration for the site, a couple of features that we're looking at are in terms of really building out that map feature on the agency overview page, and put it up right here. So like really building this map feature so that you can have a lot more detailed data by region, which folks have indicated is really important. And then also that HR core metrics page, really started to build that out, getting some user feedback, seeing what it looks like, and that plus a whole bunch of other really great suggestions and feedback that we got from a lot of our beta testers and users, which I think is a great segue to sort of have Michael and Rhonda sort of talk about some of their initial reactions when they first got onto the site, and sort of talking about how their agency has used it. So maybe if you guys pull your chairs up close to the microphone. We're doing a little shifting around for folks on the phone.
No, we're videotaping it, so just stay there. For anybody on the phone, by the way, we are recording this session. So I know I've gotten a couple of emails that people are having trouble get on. Remember, if you sign up for our DIAC, it will be on our website, or you can go to Rob or myself and we can get you a copy of the slides or a link to the video recording. And Ariane will also have a copy of this recording.
Yes, and I will be happy to share it far and wide. So I guess the first question I wanted to ask you guys about was just basically as you guys were logging onto the tool and taking a look at it, and both of these folks, can folks hear me okay? I'm gonna
gonna take your silence as a
Yes,
yes.
I'm gonna take that as a yes.
And Michael and Rhonda, see if I can hear you from there.
Can you guys hear us okay?
Yeah, I've got you loud and clear.
All right.
We got you.
Great. So basically, and both of these folks, they work with the survey on a regular basis, and they're on our practitioner level, and so their feedback was really valuable to us because they're folks that use this data regularly. So we wanted to make sure that this tool was valuable to them. So basically, my first question to you guys is sort of, as you guys were logging onto the tool and using it, what were some of your initial reactions? Like, what do you think for the tool? What were some of its strong points, and then what were some of its weaknesses?
Okay. For CISO South, the first time that I logged on, it was great because I'm the one who execs come to and say, okay, I want to take a look at my employee viewpoint survey data. Can you break it out for me by the different offices? And so I would end up exporting the data into Excel, making the charts and graphs, making it look real pretty, and sending it off to them. So this is a way to get that done pretty easily. They can access it themselves, which saves time. And also they get really, people learn in different ways. So of course we distribute the reports, but those are just numbers. And you have to go page by page and question by question. There's of course sending it to me to do the graphs, but this way they really have both. They have the numbers there, they have the graphs and the charts, and it really pulls things together.
I'll admit the first time I looked at the tool, I was slightly underwhelmed because I've been in the survey tool that they have for a couple iterations now, and I've been doing the deep dives on the data for our agency for a long time. And so I got in there, I was really frustrated that I couldn't make it do it the way I wanted to do it, and then I realized how much my executives were going to love this more than the stuff I had been putting together, and how much easier my life just got. And that was when I had kind of my moment with the tool, that what this has really enabled us to do is help get our executives curious. And that's what's been the real thing that's beginning to drive change. Because before this tool was available, that relied on finding enough analysts who had enough time and enough Excel expertise, and then enough PowerPoint expertise, and maybe some Visio expertise to crank it all together and spit out a product that an executive would actually read. And now that we have a tool that automatically does that, my data nerd self is still a little, I don't know why I would go there, but that they would go there is what really matters. And it's getting the data a lot more visibility than we could ever generate. And I think the point that you were making about adaptive design is absolutely huge, because so many of our executives right now are living in conference rooms and doing 90% of their work on their iPad, which, interestingly enough, neutralizes our PowerPoints, right? Because Apple doesn't do a lot of the graphics that we would send forward. And so they say, well, I have this slide that would show you that if I could show you that. And that's the end of the discussion, right? And now that they have something that they can pull up and say, that circle is red and we need it to be green, it seems like it's a gross oversimplification of the conversation, but it's not. It's the thing that means we're actually having the conversation now, because they can then turn it over to staff and say, you actually have the bigger tool, go dig into it, go come back with 3 reasons and 4 strategies that we could apply against this. So it's been a really exciting thing for us, and we have now pushed it out to every SES in our organization to get them looking at it and starting to ask those questions.
Great, and that's a really great segue into my next question. Is sort of as we're
Can
trying.
I interject for a moment, please? I'm with Navy. I think that it is a great tool for the executive. Us, the number crunchers, prefer the other site. But I'm afraid that the executives aren't going to go to it without some pushing. And one of the things I wanted when I first tested the site was to try and download some of the reports so that they could see what sort of information was available. And I was having a really tough time getting any of the graphics. I was wondering if you were going to be putting in some sort of a PDF file dump or something that we could use to put a piece of paper in front of the executives.
Absolutely, that's a really great question. And so the question is sort of how is there an ability to download some of the data that's on the site, or be able to download some of the graphics so that I can take this to my executive, which a lot of folks still work on paper. And it's a really great question, and it's a lot of, we've gotten that 100 times over with sort of going, how can I download this? How can I take this off of the site? And that's one of the features that we're going to work on for the next iteration. So by the end of December, beginning of January, you will have that capability. You'll be able to download it to a PDF. You'll be able to download it to a Word file. You'll also be able to download the data via an Excel file. So we're trying to figure out what are all the different formats that people can use to download this data and make it more useful to them. And we're going to provide that capability. That's one of our top priorities for our next phase of development.
Thank you so much.
No, you're welcome. Glad that we're being useful. So then it goes into my sort of next question, is sort of how are you guys introducing the dashboard to your agency? Who are you guys providing access to? Who's using it? And just sort of how are you sort of introducing this tool within your agency, and sort of what are the reactions that you're seeing so far?
So we're taking an ask the engagement question approach. One of the things that makes our agency different and special from all the other agencies we can't be possibly compared to is that because we're housing and urban development, we're very community-based. And we talk about place-based work all the time. What we're doing in Pittsburgh has to be different than what we're doing in San Antonio, because Pittsburgh and San Antonio are different places. And as we drill into our engagement data, we're using that metaphor, and we're talking about engagement as place-based. This office experiences the agency different from that office. This branch has a different set of priorities from that branch. And so we're taking this kind of federated place-based approach, and we're trying to get our executives to just ask the engagement question, which is fair to do now because we can expect that everyone else to have data to go to be able to answer it. Before, whenever we would ask the engagement question, we wouldn't get data-driven responses. We'd get those sort of gut feeling, intuition, well, people are unhappy because X, or because the cafeteria dropped the salad bar, or whatever it was that was kind of the gripe of the week. And we can now ask the engagement question and expect people to come back with something with a number, because they have easier access to those numbers. So it's become a fair question to ask. We're early in that process, so I can't say it's worked, but I'm getting a lot more phone calls about this year's EVS data than I've ever gotten in prior years, because people are beginning to get that level of interest.
Yeah, we're probably a little different in that 2013 was the first year that we broke our employee viewpoint survey data down by office before we just got it agency-wide. Mm-hmm. So last year they kind of got it, they said, okay, this year now it's their second year and they have some trend data. So not only do I analyze the data for the employee viewpoint survey, but since I handle human capital planning and human capital strategy, I work with the executives to figure out how are we going to tackle our challenge areas. And one thing I keep in mind is that this tool is awesome, but it's one data point and it's only as good as the data that goes into it. So if in the federal government, for instance, last year we had 60% of our eligible employees take the employee viewpoint survey. Well, there are 40% that did not take it. So while it's important to use the data and have the data and be able to look at it and see how they compare against other offices and formulate the strategy that works for their office, we also tell them to incorporate other things, focus groups, other surveys they can do. We have different employee groups that are working on morale and engagement, and also to combine all of those sources to come up with a solution.
That's great. That's a really great point. It's one of the things that we're trying to figure out in terms of the work that we're doing as part of the President's Management Agenda, are what are some other successful tools and strategies that agencies can use to sort of pulse their workforce. Because as everybody knows, the EVS is an annual survey. So in a lot of times, depending on the timeline of when the survey is administered, there's a very small window that people can use to try to implement solutions to try to affect the data in the survey for the upcoming year. So we want to try to figure out what are some other ways that agencies are using to pulse their workforce. And pulse surveys are a great example of what folks have been doing. Other things is like really going into their communication plans and really providing a lot of outreach and a lot of transparency. Those are other ways that folks are using to drive engagement. And one of the things that has me really excited about the tool is that the tool is helping to sort of push out those conversations in terms of, okay, we know what our engagement score is, but what are we going to do about it? And sort of being able to figure that out, and it's really exciting to me. And one of the things that we hope as the time goes on, what we're doing in the people and culture group, that we can use this as a resource, but also help it poll agencies and figure out sort of what are some successful strategies that people have used their data for and have implemented that helps invite that change. And we were talking with agencies the other day, and one agency, they were able to increase their response rate on the survey over 20% in 1 year's time, and that's really impressive. And sort of figuring out, sort of talking with them, how did they do that? And it is talking about like making sure that they had leadership go out to all the regions and talk to them and have those face-to-face conversations and saying that your feedback is really important to us, and we use this data to help drive decisions in what we're doing with the workforce. And so learning all of that, and as we're developing this tool, it's been a really exciting time in this space. I think one of the things that I wanted to ask you guys before we sort of open it up more for questions was, if there was one thing that you could change about the tool that you think would make it more valuable at this point, what would it be and why?
So I'm a big fan of the Strengths Finder approach and the build on your strengths and what you guys are doing really well. Mm-hmm. And what I think is actually one of the most important things about this tool is that it's pretty and that it invites curiosity, because our executives are getting in and they just start clicking things. And what we've had happen before is we sort of get the agency level report and it comes out and it says people are sad about this and people are happy about that, and they say, great, what do I do with 8,000 people? A little more time and resources that way, a little less that way. But because engagement is so place-based, it's hard to formulate those sort of top-level strategies, because what works for your millennials working in the San Francisco office who have one set of challenges does not work for your boomers working in the Pennsylvania office that are doing a different kind of processing, and these kinds of things. And so you get every conversation has this example and counterexample. But as we get more granular data, having this really well-designed tool is inviting people to just explore it. And we're seeing people start clicking down to things and start saying, oh, my scores are actually low, not because of my agency or not because of my program office, but because of this branch. Everyone else is actually doing okay. Or I even have, I may be in the bottom half of my agency, but 2/3 of my group are above the government average. It's this 1/3 I actually have to focus on. And we have never had the analytical capability to present that argument in a compelling way. And when I, as the analyst, come in and say, well, I've run all the numbers and your problem is Bill, they get mad about that and a little defensive. But when the executive starts clicking around and starts doing some things and says, gee, this is the group we're having a challenge in. Let me go talk to the leadership of that group and see what's really going on. And that's when they can start doing the really targeted focus groups and the localized pulse stuff. Rather than sending out another department-wide survey that we still get a 40% response rate to, and now we have kind of questionable data on 3 questions instead of iffy data on a bigger set. They can get down and say, so Bill, what's going on with your people? What's happening? What else can we do and engage on here? And sometimes it's workload, and sometimes it's other things, and sometimes Bill needs to find a career as a technical expert. And we've begun to have those conversations with a couple of people, which has been really amazing to see the data used, and that's what we're expecting to start driving next year's participation rate, is when we can say, look, we heard you, we saw what the problem was, we identified it, and you've got new leadership and a new direction for your group now. Take the survey again next year. That's where our success stories are starting to come in. But we can only do that because we're getting this tool that makes executives curious. And that's really all about design. So if you're going to do anything with the tool, invest more on the design and more on that kind of, how else can we suck you in with shiny, glittery, pretty things.
Great.
If I could build on that point, the feds, though, has kind of become onerous, whereas it's asking 98 questions. People are not going to commit time to answer surveys that take a lot more time. So The challenge is building a system that is not only going to get you the outputs that you're looking for, but it has to be as simplistic as you can make it on the front end to make it a user experience that is not going to be, gotta sit down and do this again. That's unfortunate that that's the way it's viewed, but that's the reality, and I think that's why we're having a 40% non-response rate on the feds versus the 60% response rate.
Yeah, I kind of disagree just a little bit with that, and it kind of ties into your question, what can OPM do? If employees see that taking the survey, well, not taking the survey, but using the information from the survey makes a difference in their workplace, then they will take the time to take the EVS, because it doesn't take that long, really, to do the 84 or whatever questions. And I've worked in 2 different government agencies, and at CSOSA, we didn't have a 20% increase, but we had a 13% increase 2012 to 2013, and then an increase again this year. And it was going out to employees, primarily myself, but getting leaders involved and saying, okay, you take the time to take this, here's what we're doing. You told us XYZ, here's what we've done, here's what we're going to do, and actually having them involved in that process. And then they see, okay, well, this is kind of worth my time. And to the other question, as far as what can be done, for me, I see it linking it to performance, agency performance, and I know that's the next iteration. But for our execs at CSOSA, our director and our deputy director are very keen on the employee viewpoint survey. In fact, it's part of our SESers, our senior executive service members' performance plans. Now that we can see it by office, what are you doing to make a difference? But it's also agency performance. So the bottom line is, yeah, it looks all cool and pretty, and yeah, we want employee engagement to be higher, we want global satisfaction to be higher, but what is the bottom line on the business if we do that? How does it help my agency better achieve its mission and its strategic goals? So I think that would be the next thing that would really get our execs in there looking.
Great.
Yeah, and I want to play with that idea a little bit more too, because one of the, we have another platform that we use for internal ideation. And the second most highest voted idea, it's one of those you can submit an idea and then employees can vote it up or, well, they can't vote down, but the ones that float up. The second highest rated one right now is actually, please let us do more surveys. Because employees are dying to provide this kind of feedback when they know it's being used. And so there's definitely some design things that we can do with the feds to make it a pleasanter, faster experience. And some of the questions are a little, we all get nitpicky about these things. But it's, for the tool we have, it gets the job done. And some of what we've heard is actually, can we do something like that twice a year? Or can we bring it down to an even lower level of granularity? And it's, again, I think it's that feedback loop that people need to see, that decisions were made based on the data. Because we've all done tasks that seem to take longer than they were and more painful than they were, and took half an hour of our life because something didn't seem to work well. That's the job sometimes. So I don't think that's what keeps people from doing it. I think it's the seeing it used. And that's what the data is telling us, is that when people see the data used, they want to participate in the data more. And that, at least at our agency, has been about making the data place-based and granular to the offices where people live. Because our employees don't experience HUD, they experience their manager and their group and their workload, and very, very few of them ever move in the exalted realms of the cabinet agency. They're in the trenches every day, in the field offices, trying to deliver on the mission. And that's what's been hard to see in the data before, and we're getting closer and closer to that. And that's what's driving our response rates, because we were also fairly well improved this round.
All of you are commenting on the importance of communicating back to your employees what you're going to do with the data and what actions you're going to take to maybe improve certain areas. But it's interesting because, and this is just a general comment, so I wonder what you're thinking about this. It's interesting because in every agency that I've worked at, there's this big push to take the survey, but there's no communication back with this kind of information, even on a high level, of what your scores are. So for instance, I, as a regular employee, would be digging on websites, trying to see what's going on in my own organization. It seems to me that even though this tool, which is absolutely wonderful. I'm so excited to see it, not just because I'm a part of it, but I really believe in what it can do with regards to data-driven decisions and holding things accountable across organizations. But what shouldn't we be socializing this back to employees from a high level? I mean, we're comparing it with the government-wide average, so it's not really disclosing anything that people don't already know, but it seems like if communication and transparency drive ultimately engagement, that we should maybe be allowing some more use for this information. Just a thought.
Yeah, we do. And you probably do too. And I'm not saying CSOSA is perfect, but we do have the support of our executives and our directors. So there's a whole communication plan. And afterwards, when we could release results without the government-wide, we did that. We post them on our intranet. We even post the office level results so employees can see how HR did, how IT did, whatever. And then we periodically follow up. So when something new comes, we'll say, you know what, this addresses, and very quickly, we're doing leadership competency assessments now for the first time. And part of that marketing strategy is on the employee viewpoint survey, certain percent of staff said XYZ, they didn't feel they could get a better job, blah, blah, blah. We're addressing it part with this competency assessment. It will help you, blah, blah, blah. So in a lot of our major efforts, especially in HR, we tie back to where we got the information, and most of the time it's the employee viewpoint survey. So
one of the things that we've started doing is when we do various employee engagement pilots of, we're going to try this program or that program, we've also been doing pre and post surveys so that we just rip off the EVS questions and use them, which helps drive home that we're attempting to move the dial on question 37. Tell us where you are now, tell us where you are 2 months from now once we've done the thing.
Yeah.
And that's helping us get some of the same result, but I think I'm going to see if I can get our stuff up.
You have a question on that?
Yeah, we're winding down, so I want to make sure we get questions from people on the phone as well.
Sure, I know we have one question in the room, so I wanted to address that one first.
So my perception is similar to Mika's. Sometimes I feel like the EVS results are kind of like closed hole. So, for example, I have a teammate on the sister team who's asking me, can you get me the EVS results for my office? And I'm like going back to my secret emails looking at, here you go, Rachel, this is closed hold. And then I'm like, having to send it to the person and say, this is closed hold. To me, like a system like this opens up the results so that people can access it. So first, I have a system question. Is there like a role-based access control feature where you can say, Rhonda can look at results for X, Y, and Z office, but not A, B, and C? Does that exist?
So, so the question for the folks on the phone is, in terms of access, is there a role-based access, meaning that can someone go on and be able, when they go onto the site, can they only access the scores for a certain number of organizations? And the answer to that is no. If you log on to the system, you're able to see your entire agency's data, and we did that for a reason. Okay. And we want to be able, when we first rolled this out, the tool was very much designed for senior level executives to be able to take a better use of their data and to be able to look at it and see across their whole organization. And we're quickly finding out how valuable this data is to a wide variety of people in the organization. And we are encouraging folks to share their sites, to share the data with their agencies on a very broad level to anybody in the agency that would find this data valuable and use it to help drive their performance and help better their office and better their organization. But what we also chose to do policy-wise is we wanted to leave that decision to initial access to agencies first, put that in the agency's hands, so sort of to empower them. Some agencies are not as empowered as others, but we are hoping that as this data becomes popular and people are seeing the value of it over time, that agencies will grow and do that. And so what we're hoping to do is to help drive that a little bit. And I can't emphasize enough the importance of sharing this data and communicating it out. One of the things that we're driving with our engagement efforts as part of the People and Culture goal is making sure that this EVS data gets down to the manager level and gets in a very short amount of time. The folks at OPM who run the EVS, they send out over 20,000 reports each year on the survey down to the manager level within all the organizations. And what we're finding is that a lot of managers aren't getting that data fast enough or not getting that data at all. So we're really trying to drive that in making sure that it's an emphasis and that it's a priority, that folks are getting access to their data and getting it access very quickly when it becomes available so that they have time to act on it and understand it. And that's a huge priority that we're trying, and we're hoping that this will help with that. I've been asked to sort of make sure we get some of the questions that may be on the phone. So any of the folks on the phone have a question?
This is Liz Parker from USDA. I have a question. How widely is access to the tool, and how do we get it? So in USDA we have like 26 component agencies. The last I heard, which was a couple of months ago, was that the data had only been populated at the USDA level and wasn't available below that level. Is it now available for component agencies, and how do we get access to the tool?
Okay, so that question is sort of in two parts in terms of the first one is how deep down does the data go to for agencies, and then the second is how can I get access? So two really important questions. In terms of your first question, in terms of the data, for just about every agency that participates in the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey, they now have a dashboard, and at least somebody in their agency is accessed, and we provided the initial access to folks. So we're super excited about that. And for each agency, the level of data that's available is based on how they report their organization to the survey team. So for example, if they send their organizational codes to the survey team and they break down their agency by the 10 basic offices and then the groups within that office, the data that you can see on the dashboard is you can see your agency-wide scores, you can see your scores for each of those components or main offices that you've provided to the survey team in order to assess and do the survey. So each agency can see by their main agency and then by their offices. And then the only sort of caveat to that is if any of your offices have less than 10 people in them, that data is not shown because of privacy reasons. People are worried that if for less than 10, that folks could be able to identify like who the actual person is and what that actual person's response is. So that's part of confidentiality, privacy reasons. We want to make sure that people are comfortable taking the survey. So that rule sort of applies. And then the second question, which I'm sure a lot of folks are interested in, is how do I get access? Really great question. So how we've done this initial rollout is that for all the agencies, we provided initial access to every agency's performance improvement officer or equivalent, or their chief human capital officer or their equivalent, and usually the agency leadership. And we provided them with very much with access and administrative access in order that they can grant access to other people. And what we're finding out is that they're not as quick to get access out to everybody. So we're trying to figure out a better rollout plan, a better access plan to get folks access to that tool. And so we started off with a couple of different ways. We started off providing access to everybody's survey point of contact. So the person in your agency who works with the survey and who helps like on the survey team administer the survey and track the survey, those folks have access now. And we're working with agencies to encourage and grant broad access within their agency, but we also kind of want to leave the decision in their hands so to empower them to provide access. So for a lot of agencies, some folks need a little oomph and little back from their employees saying like, I want access to the data, can I get access?
And for Liz, likely it would go to the executive department level, right? To then delegate what access is given to each agency across the Department of Agriculture, I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you might also want to mention to everybody where to go on the website if they have any problems or questions.
Right, so right now you need a login in order to go into the site. So if you go to UnlockTalent.gov and you don't have a login, you just see a page being like, you need access to go to the site. So it's not very pretty and not very fun. But if anybody has questions about the site, people who do have access, or people have folks like questions about getting access and who can they reach out to, we have an inbox for the tool, and it's UnlockTalent, all one word, at OPM.gov, and that'll go to an inbox that usually goes to me and a couple of other folks, and then we can get your questions answered and figure out. Some people have questions like, who in my agency has access? And so we're trying to provide that to folks and get that so that folks can get access, and also come up with a little bit more of an aggressive rollout plan. And just so the last sort of slide that's on here, just really quickly, is talking about like, what can I do with this tool? What can I do with the data? And some of the suggestions, like we want agencies to come up with a lot of really great creative ideas. We want to hear what everybody's doing with it. But some of the initial things that we're suggesting to folks is share it. First thing is share the data. Make it available to people that can find it valuable and find it useful. Make it available to your employees so that they can see it and learn from it. Use it to drive your decision making in areas of engagement. Sort of go into that and use it to say, this is what my baseline is. How can I change it? And then what we tell folks is telling a story through the data. Using it to understand your workforce and taking a look at, well, my engagement score in this office is X. What is that telling me? What can I get from this data? Or where can I go to find out more? And I need to talk to this office to figure out what's going on and start building that story. So that is pretty much it. On the deck, I have some basic resources. I have a video that Director Archuleta did about introducing the tool, so people can go and sort of watch that quick 2-minute video, and it gives a little bit of background on the tool. In terms of behind the people and culture goal and some of the things that we're doing to try to drive improvement in engagement, people can go to performance.gov and check out some of the background information around the goal, and then back the link to the OPM's YouTube channel, the culture change, speed of trust, sort of learning some best practices from other agencies on what they've done to drive employee engagement. We've done a lot of Q&A, and then last but not least is my email address. I want to make it available to folks if you have questions, you want to reach out. I try to get back to folks within like a 48-hour time period. I've been getting a lot of emails and a lot of queries lately, so I ask for patience. But I will address them, and I want people to provide, if you have access to the tool, I want you to provide me feedback about how we can make it better, and B, if you're not getting access, or if you think folks in your agency should be getting access, how can we encourage leadership to give you that access?
And I'd like some of your success stories to
Yes,
share on
yes,
the community of
absolutely,
practice.
yes.
So you see Ariane's address there. If you have anything to suggest or offer up that would be beneficial for other people to learn about or hear from, I will work with the team to get it on the community of practice. You can reach me at Mika, MIKA.cross, CROS as in Sierra S, at OPM.gov. Would love your help in populating that resource for our other folks across government.
Absolutely.
I want to thank Ariane, Rhonda, and Michael for being here today and sharing all this valuable information. I know we have like so many people on the phone that people couldn't even dial in. But if you go to our right at IAC.com and ask to be, .gov, I'm sorry, .org.
Organization, ORG.
Yeah, maybe I do need to start drinking coffee again. Or any one of us, Mike or myself, Bob Clark, let one of us know and sign up for IAC membership. It's free to government, and ask to be part of the human capital, and you'll get our announcements, and you'll also get the calendar and a copy of all these slides. I really appreciate that. And thank you guys again. I really appreciate it.